What we do in life echoes in eternity. So goes the saying of General Maximus Decimus Meridius in the 2000 movie Gladiator starring Russell Crowe. After attempting to return Rome to being a democratic republic by sacrificing his life and defeating a sadistic emperor, Maximus's sacrifice proves to be entirely worthless, as 15 years later, Rome is now ruled by two sadistic and psychotic emperors. Now, a new semi-familiar face is called upon to balance the scales of justice by becoming a Gladiator II. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Gladiator II. Gladiator II, written by David Scarpa, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen, Joseph Quinn, and Fred Hechinger. And for a complete cast listing, as always, you can go to the link in our show notes. It is just me today. Gladiator II picks up 15 years after the first one left off. Gladiator 1 came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. It came out in 2000, exactly 2000. I was correct. Late 90s, early 2000s. 2000 is correct. So it's 24 years after the original Gladiator starring Russell Crowe, which is kind of like a movie that, in a lot of ways, relaunched this epic war drama with all the films that came after it. I mean, this is also like the Lord of the Rings era. This is, what else came out? Like there were so many movies. I mean, even like Martin got in on it doing Black Knight around that time. There was just a lot of movies that had a lot of kind of like this medieval fighting slash, and not necessarily medieval, I guess that's a different time, but y'all know what I mean. Like that old school, like everybody's dirty and stinks, that type of thing. Like that's the thing that you could come to expect from these types of films. And I feel like there was an era where we were watching a lot of these, like, you know, Braveheart was out, and I believe Braveheart is mid to late 90s, if I'm not mistaken. There was just a lot of these movies out in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. You don't see nearly as much of them anymore. Not post Game of Thrones. This is probably the first one, I feel like, first big one anyway. I'm not saying they don't exist, but in terms of there being a boom of these movies, you don't really see them nearly as much as you used to. And I guess, I mean, the biggest point about any of that is that when I was told they were making a Gladiator 2, I remember marking how not excited I was. I wasn't enthused about seeing this movie whatsoever. Oh my God, there are so many rats where I am over here by the water in Georgetown. My God, they just walking right up to me. I'm sitting by the water by Georgetown. I'm looking at Rosalind. If anybody's from the DC area, you probably know where I am just from saying that. Beautiful view, lots of rats. I can hear them, and it's very disturbing. Whew, let me just get through this review. So anyway, so I wasn't enthused when I saw the trailer for this movie. They've added Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal to kind of beef up the cast, but it's, you know, it's a story about Paul Mescal. He's at the center, and obviously Connie Nielsen's in it from the first one. So there are threads that they make that attach the new film to the old film. For the first third of this movie, up to the first half of this movie, it was a 4-star movie. I was like, this is great. I like what they're doing. I like where this is going. And then something happened that makes it distinctly connected to the first one that I felt like was entirely unnecessary. I almost wish that instead of doing what they did, they would have just made this a little bit more independent of the first film, or maybe operating in the shadow of the first film rather being directly connected, because the direct connections really didn't do anything to strengthen the actual plot of the movie. There's parts of the movie that just aren't explained whatsoever, or if they are explained, I didn't hear them. There's no caption on the movie, so I just have to believe what they're saying into my ears. but there's portions of the movie where, you know, there are now twin emperors that run Rome. We don't really get an origin of where these twin emperors came from. We just know that they are essentially playing Commodus, but they're doing a worse job because it takes two of them to equal one Joaquin Phoenix. And Joaquin Phoenix did a very good job of convincing us and kind of like devolving as the movie went over time. Whereas these two kind of show up crazed straight from the beginning. And Pedro Pascal has a part in the film where he's playing like kind of like the conflicted soldier who's like uncertain of to whom his loyalties really should lie, which creates for brilliant conflict in the film. Unfortunately, there were too many other threads going that kind of just really right around, like I said, the first third to halfway through the movie, they just really hamstring the rest of the plot, because now we have to pay service to Paul Mescal and Denzel Washington. And I mean, as someone who really loves Denzel Washington, I thought he was feasting on this role in the beginning, but as it continues, I can't even say what I'm going to say without spoiling the movie. But as the movie continues, I will just say I did not enjoy him. And it's not for an obvious reason, which you may have picked up now that I've said that. It is more because what I felt like they had to do, because it was Denzel Washington, is that they had to give him more to do. And I don't necessarily think that serviced the film. It certainly serviced Denzel Washington, but it just really didn't service the film. And the problem is there's so little character development in a movie that is a sequel. I mean, and there are characters that continue from the first film, and I'm watching this movie and I'm just very confused as to why these people are doing what they're doing. What is their actual motivation? Like what? And they didn't do enough to like really explain much of anything to me. I think probably the only character that was mostly developed was maybe Connie Nielsen, followed closely by Pedro Pascal. But even those two, I didn't get enough of the backstory or understand their connection or what that was about. It just, I mean, I think as a person who watched Gladiator and sees that, like, if you watch it now, like one of the best parts about Gladiator is that they show you these incredible scenes of like very intense violence inside a Coliseum. But like I saw this in 2000, so I would have been 16 or 17, and watching this is probably one of the first like violent movies I had seen. Even watching it then and then watching it maybe years later as an adult, it's a movie where I'm just like, man, the violence isn't just there just to be cool, even though it was cool. Remember watching Gladiator, there's a lot in there that was like, man, this is a pretty cool movie. But outside of that, like it feels like there's some sort of purpose that is served through what's going on, through these acts of violence. Whereas this one is doing a thinly veiled comparison of crazy emperors to kind of the political state that we're in right now. Yes, I'm recording this after the election. No, I do not want to talk about it. But unless I've already released an episode talking about it, I tell you right now, it is Thursday after the Tuesday, and I don't feel good about it right now. So keep me in your prayers. But like that comparison just didn't do much to serve me. Like this idea of like, oh, empires fall, what's going to happen? Rome is on the brink of falling. Like it didn't do enough for me. And I feel like they thought they were doing enough. I'm convinced that Ridley Scott is sure that he did enough, but I just don't think that the script had the heft or it was a lot of unearned scenes, especially towards the end. It wasn't great. I'm sorry. It just wasn't great. And I wanted it to be good. It was a 4-star movie. And with the poor character development, with Denzel Washington sucking up way more screen time than I think he should have, I think there was gravitas that Denzel could have lended to this film that a less is more approach probably would have served. I don't know if he's like swinging for the fences with awards on this one. I could see them nominating him. And I mean, of course, I'm going to root for Denzel Washington, but this was not my favorite role that he was in. He's done other roles that I think were a lot better than this. And for this to be like in late career Denzel, I keep calling him Denzel, his name is Denzel. Like for this to be late career Denzel, I was disappointed. as someone who really loves Denzel, someone who really loves Gladiator, someone who really loves Pedro Pascal, I just feel like this movie did them little service, and it's not going to be a reason to be at the theaters in November at all. Like, you're going to go and you'll leave and be like, it was all right. Like, you're not going to leave changed, I promise you. It's just, yeah, so this is a 4-star movie that really drops to about 2.5. Maybe. I mean, I think I gave Wolverine and Deadpool a 2.5, which I didn't like very much. But there was some merit. Like, in this film, there are fight scenes that are fine. Like, I kind of feel like they were happening, and in my mind I was just going, whatever. Like, it wasn't really sticking with me that much. They don't give Paul Mescal enough of a backstory for me to truly understand why he is a leader, why people listen to him, what's important. One incident happens early in the film, and then after that he gains the respect of everyone just completely just because of one thing he did, which I thought was impressive and a nice story and would be enough to make like an entry point into your relationship with other people in this film and the other gladiators, but not enough to necessarily spell out that relationship. So yeah, I don't know, man. Bad character development. It looked good. I really enjoy seeing a movie like Gladiator today at 40, knowing that so much has changed in terms of film technology and stuff. But if I'm being honest, yes, a lot has changed, but because this is a period piece, you don't really get the full sense that there's a difference between these two movies. Maybe if I watched them closer together, maybe I'd be able to tell you more about that. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a 2-star movie. I don't even think it's 2.5, honestly. I think it's a 2-star movie. Y'all just listen to me talk it down from a 2.5 to a 2. Yeah, 2 of 5 stars. Do better. Like, just do better than this. You didn't, like, this wasn't, it's a 2 of 5-star movie. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Round Studios. I mixed this episode, and per usual, I'm asking for your help. Every week I have to put out an episode. Every week it takes some effort in which to do it. There's driving, there's coordination, there's setting the schedule, there's finding other people to be on the show, all of that. You'll notice I've done a lot of this year alone, because sometimes it's just hard to get people based on when the press screenings are, So it's tough sometimes. And honestly, if this is a show that's bringing you a little bit of joy, if you're enjoying it, the best thing you could do is help us out with the Patreon. You can do it as low as $7 a month. We are working on extending our offerings, especially in 2025, doing a little more, but it makes sense in order to offer more content, extra bonus, all of that stuff. If I'm doing more, I'm in a position where, as an independent creator, doing more requires more time. And if we're being honest, time is money. So if you can help with the Patreon, that's helpful. If you can't, keep listening to the show, keep enjoying, share with others. Let's get those downloads numbers up. If you want to join the Patreon, though, patreon.com/Leaving the Theater, or go to the link in our show notes. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Gladiator II, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or Threads at OHitsBigRon. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios and on Twitter at Oh It's Big Ron Stu. That's STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening.